Sorry.
Tell everybody how old you are. 18. Almost 18. In March. Mwah. Mommy Debbie's.
She gets subcutaneous fluids twice a day, every day. Isn't
and
that right?
Medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And probiotics. And Chinese herbs. And lots of love.
And a proper diet.
Hi guys, I'm Anna.
And I'm Brian.
And we are
Those Annoying Vegans! And we're back with another mukbang discussion. And today we are tackling probably our number one asked question on the YouTubes. What do we feed our cats?
And we're going to tell you, in addition to a whole bunch of other information, everything we've learned about cat nutrition. There's so much to cover.
And today we will be having our very own recipe for
Yellow
coconut
coconut
curry.
curry.
We put in some baby corn and we also added lemongrass.
The link is in the description below if you'd like to make it. We're also having kombucha.
Mm-hmm.
Ginger lemonade.
If you ask me, are you in the mood for curry? I'll always say yes. Just to be clear, in this video, we are going to talk about cats. We're going to focus solely on cat nutritional requirements.
So I think it's really important for you guys to know how we came across our cats. Because a lot of people say, that's not vegan. Well, let's start at the beginning. I moved to LA in December 2008. I had a cat named Madeline in Boston whom I left with my mom and our older family cat Figaro, and he had chronic renal failure. He was so attached to her and I didn't want his health to worsen. Shortly after moving, March 2010, I needed cats in my life. And granted, I wasn't even vegetarian. I had no idea that vegan was a thing. So I hopped on Craigslist and I found Sweetie and Frisky. Started fostering them, but eventually adopted them. Frisky was about 6 years old, Sweetie was 9, so they were adult cats. In the beginning of 2011, Frisky was diagnosed with gastrointestinal lymphoma. 2 weeks later, Sweetie was diagnosed with chronic renal failure. I cannot tell you how heartbreaking that is when you get told that your animal companion has a terminal illness. It is because of them that I started researching and reading how can I make their lives more comfortable. At the time, I was still feeding them, wellness, natural balance.
Commercial pet food.
Yeah, things I thought were healthy. There is no cure for feline gastrointestinal lymphoma. It is not a mass you can just pluck out of their intestine. It's a thickening of their intestinal wall. I found an amazing veterinarian, our current doctor, Dr. Palmquist, who guided me through holistic care. And yes, she did receive chemotherapy and she actually handled it really well. She went into remission and lived for another 1.5 years. They told me at the VCA West LA that she was the longest living cat that they'd had with gastrointestinal lymphoma, because after diagnosis they can live anywhere between 4 and 6 more months, but she lived an extra 1.5 years before she stopped being herself and we decided to say goodbye. One of the worst days of my life, by the way. Now Sweetie has chronic renal failure and hyperthyroidism, which come hand in hand usually. Cats with chronic renal failure can live a very long time, years even, with proper maintenance and treatment. Needless to say, it is really difficult to see your animal companion deteriorate. Going back to when I had Sweetie and Frisky, I used to volunteer for LA Animal Rescue. Puppies and kittens would come and go all the time, and one fateful day, I walked up to the kitten cage and this little kitten sat in my hand. I was like, oh no, please don't, please no, this is not the right time. This is not the right time. Went home, couldn't stop thinking about her. I was sitting on the couch one day and I was having this nostalgic feeling. And then I remembered this drawing I had made in the 7th grade. Raced to the closet, I pulled it out. Look at this. Isn't that creepy? Down to the markings. It's almost like she knew how my soul would find her. It was the best decision I could have made. Gracie May brought light into my life again. Smiles, laughter, through what was a very difficult time. Fast forward. I meet Brian, we move in together. We became vegan together. We started thinking about our future with Gracie and Sweetie. Sweetie was getting up there.
We kind of came to a decision where we said, like, if a kitten happens to come into our lives, we'll consider adopting. Like, we weren't looking for a kitten.
Gracie never had anyone to play with. Gracie May
One day, a friend from the adoption called and said that she had not one, but two bottle baby kittens. Her mom, who owns a rescue in Florida, did not have room for the two kittens in Florida, so her daughter flew them to LA. Hey, we got these two bottle baby kittens. And we said, well, yeah, okay, I mean, we'll foster.
Yeah.
We'll foster.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
We'll feed them formula from a bottle in a very nurturing, parental way.
Look at this. Look how cute. Oh my gosh. How can you resist? How can you resist this? Reality eventually sank in, and we realized we can't just split them up. They're sisters. So we kept them both. And now they happily play and run around and have kitten blitzes all over the place.
It actually has been really good for Gracie because Gracie wanted to roughhouse and she wanted to play and she wanted to like tackle Sweetie, and Sweetie was just not into it. It's just a really big age gap. It's like a 12-year age gap. Aria and Emmy were the perfect little companions. I watched Gracie become a kitten again, sort of like she chases things and she plays with things and she scurries around the apartment and chases after them and they wrestle. And so here we are, two vegans with 4 cats. So what do we do?
When Sweetie and Frisky became sick, I happened to run into a woman at the Hollywood Farmers Market who had a small booth called Bioethics Pet Food. She was selling raw food and cooked food for dogs and cats. I ended up having a conversation with her, and I started switching Sweetie and Frisky over to a raw food diet. If you're curious about this, there is this amazing documentary on Netflix called Pet Fooled. If you haven't watched it, we strongly suggest you watch it the second you're done with our video. It is like the What the Health for pet nutrition. In addition to all the research we're going to present to you today, we also consulted with a board-certified veterinarian, so we're going to use her as a source as well and talk about raw diets.
So what is a raw diet, Anna?
Well, a raw diet generally consists of raw meat.
Oh, that is not vegan at all.
It is not vegan for us.
Oh, but it's perfectly natural and healthy for them?
Absolutely.
Ah, I was confused there because I'm a human vegan and I was applying my ethics to their way of life.
We're not saying go to the Ralph's or the Kroger's or the Star Market and pluck a steak off the shelf and just feed it to your cat. We're going to talk about that a little more later. The fear that we feel when it comes to giving raw meat to our pets stems from our own fear of consuming raw meat ourselves. But it just so happens that cats, just like dogs, belong to the order Carnivora. Cats are specifically obligate carnivores. We know you've probably heard this before. What does that mean? Well, it means that they absolutely 100% need meat in order to live a full, healthy life.
It's almost like they're obligated to be carnivores.
So what makes a cat an obligate carnivore? Well, first, let's look at where they came from. Today's house cats go back thousands and thousands of years. They are descendants of desert-dwelling species of feline, and it is believed they were domesticated in Egypt.
For a very specific reason, because human beings, being the herbivores that we are, we started farming all of this grain, and then we wanted to store that grain and not have it be eaten by anything that was not a human being. And the problem is that mice really like grain. Well, guess who really likes to eat mice? So we had a mutually beneficial relationship there.
Symbiosis.
Yeah, the cats got fed by eating the mice, and the humans got fed by eating the grain. We didn't choose to domesticate these carnivorous animals. People thousands of years ago chose to do that, and the repercussions of which are felt today. Now we have almost 100 million cats in the United States.
Now, even though we've domesticated cats, their genotype remains the same. Their genetic makeup, their DNA. Their phenotype, however, what they look like, has changed a lot. We've bred them to look like this, and this, and this. Just because I have brown hair and you have blonde hair, I have brown eyes, you have green eyes, I am shorter, he's taller, or I'm lighter skin and my friend's darker skin, that we have different nutritional requirements. Unless you have a very specific condition, we're pretty much all the same. So what does that mean? It means that our house cat's digestive system actually works the same as a lion's, as a tiger's. Very little has changed in that department.
Even their behavior, albeit on a smaller scale. If you watch a house cat's behavior, they stalk, they hunt, and now they live in human dwellings. And so those instincts and those skill sets have been adapted.
We have not been able to breed genetics out of our house cats.
I mean, if you throw a fake mouse toy across the floor, as so many people on YouTube have done on prank videos, to a human being, that usually scares the crap out of them and they run. Whereas to a cat, they get laser focused and they want to hunt it down. That's an instinct that we do not share with cats.
On YouTube, we found a bunch of dissection videos that apparently veterinary students put up as part of their studies. If you look at a cat's intestines, their small intestines, their large intestine, it's a clump. It could fit in your hand. A cat's intestines are about 2.5 times its body length.
And by body length, we mean trunk length. We've had that discussion on this channel before. Your neck to your rear end.
From here to the butt.
You wouldn't count a cat's tail, just like you wouldn't count an ostrich's legs.
Yeah.
Just like you shouldn't count our legs or our arms if we stood like this. Now on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have us, Homo sapiens, who have intestines that are about 20 to 25 feet long, and our trunks are about 2 to 3 feet in length. So there you have a 10 times ratio as opposed to a 2.5 to 3 times ratio. Our intestines are very long, and our food stays in our intestines for a very long period of time compared to cats.
A cat's digestive process, according to the Feline Nutrition Foundation, is highly efficient, taking about 12 hours on a raw meat diet.
Hi.
Gracie May!
Do you want to be here?
Come.
There we go.
Yay, baby May.
This is Gracie.
Oh,
Gracie will be 5.
Gracie's gonna be 5 this year. Look at how beautiful. Want to come with Mommy?
Good.
Oh, baby May. Oh, okay. A human's digestive process takes anywhere from 24 to 72 hours. Now, why the large gap? Women have a significantly longer digestive process than men. For one, the female colon is about 10 centimeters longer on average. It is believed that that's because we require more water absorption during childbearing. That's what happens in our colon. Also, our colon is kind of twisted up because we had to make room for all those reproductive organs, whereas men, their colons are more horseshoe-shaped because they only had to make room for their prostate.
On the downside, however, I cannot create human life inside of me. So.
Well, I would give you that job in a heartbeat. So of course, our digestive process also depends on what we eat. These are averages. It takes about 6 to 8 hours for food to pass through your stomach and small intestine, and the rest of that time is spent in the colon. Meat and fish take about 48 hours to digest. Whole plant foods, less than a day. Liquids and things like candy, few hours.
So you're saying that carbohydrates are digested faster than protein and fat?
That is correct.
That's so weird. Because I heard on the internet that we're supposed to eat meat, and meat is really high in fat and protein.
That is correct.
Okay, well, I'm learning all sorts of things today.
Now, what else makes a cat an obligate carnivore?
Well, if you notice, as a human being, you put food in your mouth and then you start chewing it. And your mouth releases saliva, and the saliva starts to break down the food in your mouth before you ever even swallow it. For a cat, that's not true. They do not have any salivary amylase. They do not digest anything in their mouth. If you watch a cat eat, they just sort of bite chunks and swallow. Their jaws actually only move straight up and straight down. There's no side-to-side grinding motion, but us herbivores, we do have that side-to-side grinding motion because our digestion starts here. Cats also have a much lower pH in their gut. Their pH is typically about 1, which is really acidic.
For those of you worried about pathogens and bacteria in raw food, that's where the pH comes in.
Yeah.
They are designed to combat pathogens and bacteria. What other things make cats obligate carnivores?
Well, if you have a cat at home, you probably notice that your cat doesn't really drink water all that often.
Cats don't have a strong thirst response.
They're supposed to get their water from their food, i.e. muscle tissue, flesh. And if your cat does drink a lot of water, that's actually a bad sign.
It's a sign of possibly chronic renal failure, which is what makes kibble so detrimentally bad for your pet, dog or cat. Kibble is dehydrated food.
And in fact, Dr. Susan Wynn, whom we spoke to, we told you about her at the beginning, she has a quote about this very topic. She did earn her doctorate in veterinary medicine in 1987, and she's been active in veterinary practice for over 25 years. And she achieved her board certification in veterinary clinical nutrition in 2016. She has this to say: "These animals are desert natives and consume their water from their prey as free water is scarce. Since water is often unavailable in sufficient quantities, cats are able to conserve body water by concentrating their urine. Now, when you give a cat a dry kibble diet, they are not getting water from their food and their urine is constantly concentrated, and in my opinion, these cats often live their lives in a state of subclinical dehydration. So the first difference between raw and typical kibble diets is that they are high in moisture, which I believe is best for all healthy cats."
The other thing that makes cats obligate carnivores is that they require a high protein diet.
We do too, though, right? I get a lot of protein. 'Cause I'm
Not
bulking
as
up.
much as cats.
Oh, okay. From Dr. Wynn once more, high meat diets are generally high in fat as well, which is one explanation for why the coats of raw-fed animals look so great. But the low carbohydrate content is the crux of this matter.
Their livers make all the glucose they need. In the wild, the animals they consume have a little bit of glycogen in their livers and in their muscle tissue, but not much.
People will eat a lot of meat thinking that they need a lot of protein, and they're eating a lot of protein by eating a lot of chicken breasts or whatever. Along with that protein generally comes a lot of saturated fat.
Which clogs our arteries and
Yes.
heart disease. You can feed a cat as much meat as you want. They're not going to develop atherosclerosis.
No, that's our thing. We get atherosclerosis from eating meat. Cats do not.
There are many other qualities that distinguish cats as obligate carnivores. We wanted to point out some of the most obvious ones
that are more related to nutrition. So you might be asking yourself, if all of this is true, then why do so many human beings feed their cats kibble diets?
Canned food.
Why do we do that?
Pet food companies are selling to us. Why make their food look like Captain Crunch and Lucky
Right.
Charms?
Nope.
That's for us.
So you're saying cats don't walk into the pet food store with their credit card and buy the food?
Also, many pet food companies are involved with and influence veterinary study. They offer scholarships, nutritional education. If you walk into any of these veterinary hospitals or offices, you will probably see right on the shelves in the lobby area, Hills, Royal Canin, for bladder,
They got
for
all
obesity,
the
for
types of
indoor
food.
cats, for outdoor cats, everything. I've often asked people, like, what do you feed your cat? Oh, he's on a special bladder kidney mix. Oh no, your cat has renal failure? Oh no, he's male, and males tend to get bladder crystals.
Yeah.
Wait, so your cat is not sick, but you're preventing him from getting sick by giving him medicated food instead of giving him a diet that is evolutionarily appropriate. There is a really comprehensive article that we will link below, and you can read all about the influence that these pet food companies have on veterinary study and veterinarians and education and us, because this is what we are told by the professionals.
It's very reminiscent of human beings. You know, human beings all the time, they go, well, I'm starting to get a gut. You know, my back's starting to hurt. You know, I'm not what I used to be, but what are you going to do? You know, getting older. Never taking into consideration that maybe what you're putting in your face 3 times a day, every day, could be affecting your health. It's the same with cats. If you give a cat basically McDonald's, this is like giving a human being McDonald's every day. If you give a cat kibble every day, they're not supposed to eat this.
Yeah.
And so what do you expect? Of course they're going to get kidney
Chronic
problems.
Renal failure is the #1 killer in cats. This is a topic for another video. I know many of you who know about chronic renal failure will probably freak out and say, but aren't you supposed to feed your cat a low protein diet? A low protein diet, that's what every vet tells you. Well, if you're interested, we can make a video about that.
A cat renal failure video?
Yeah, because there
We
is
have
a
enough
lot
info.
to it. Yeah, the pet food industry is making our cats sick. Does that sound familiar?
But don't worry, they'll sell you something to make them better too.
It is really important that you guys look at the ingredients labels just like you do with your own food.
You're a parent, and so it is on you to be knowledgeable about what you're putting in your cat's food bowl.
Pet food companies are not required to disclose the source of their ingredients as long as they meet those nutritional requirements. For example, a particular percentage of protein doesn't mean it comes from the right source. A lot of pet foods use fillers like corn, pea protein, soy.
Wait, there's protein in plants? This is a game changer.
Well, see, pet food companies are in on it. So they use these cheap fillers, not to mention byproduct meal, slaughterhouse leftovers. What humans don't consume goes into our pet food.
You're still supporting factory farming if you buy pet food with animal byproduct meal in it.
Each species of animal out there has their own nutritional requirements and are equipped to process their evolutionary food source. Doesn't matter how hungry a snake is, you plop a salad, it's not gonna eat it. Pandas, they eat bamboo. Polar bears, they eat seal. Every single species out there. Why are our cats and our dogs any different? The disadvantage that they have, which is very similar to our disadvantage, is that they're also nutritionally resilient, which means that if they're eating a poor diet, it's not going to immediately show. You'll start to eventually see degenerative conditions, a decrease in their vitality, hip dysplasia, they start gaining weight, they start showing a lack of interest in their food.
When we feed our cats, they are real excited to eat it, and they eat it instantaneously. They are so happy to be eating raw meat. If you put kibble in front of a cat and the cat is disinterested, that's probably not the best sign that the food is good for the animal.
And some people leave the food out to let them graze, which is not natural. Cats don't graze in nature. They don't just have food available at all times. Yeah, that's what causes obesity. And I think people do that because they're afraid of underfeeding their cats. If their cat doesn't eat breakfast, they'll eat it later. But I think a cat eventually resorts to eating the kibble because they're so hungry.
And cats and dogs, just like human beings, are sort of opportunistic eaters. Like human beings, we can eat a lot of things. Doesn't mean it's good for us. If you're a human being in a snowy climate with no plants and you're starving, you will eat what you have to eat. Just like if you're a cat and you're indoors and there is no prey to hunt, and you're starving, you will eat what you have to eat. Maybe that's kibble in a bowl that's been sitting there all day long.
So that brings us to vegan cat food.
Yeah, vegan cat food. Just buy that. Problem solved.
We have to think about who they're marketing to. Are they marketing to cats or are they marketing to vegans?
I have a guess.
Do you think it's good for them given everything we know about what's natural? Their protein sources are from plants, which are very high in carbohydrates. Yes, they can live on it and survive on it, but we are not confident about it long term.
Reading through this article, which analyzed 4 studies on vegetarian and vegan cat food, we found several red flags in terms of the nutritional adequacy of vegan and vegetarian cat foods. Some of them are just supplements designed to be added to a homemade or meat-based diet and are not complete themselves, such as VeggieCat Kibble Mix and Wysong Vegan. Evolution Canned Diet, for example, is marketed as a complete diet, although it is deficient in several nutrients, including taurine, B vitamins, calcium, etc.
In another study, 8 vegetarian cats and 86 dogs were studied, and though their diets contained taurine, in all cases, the levels were inadequate. This article also touched on urinary alkalinization, which found that vegan and vegetarian diets result in more alkaline urine because of the higher pH of plant-based protein. And this leads to the formation of stones in the urinary system, which reminds me of this anecdote that I will share with you later in the video.
So as you can see, the results are hardly compelling and not nearly enough to make us fully confident as cat parents. Just as a whole food plant-based diet is what's healthy and natural for human beings, raw meat diet is what's healthy and what's natural for cats. Granted, there is an ethical component to veganism for humans. We look at the destruction on the planet and we look at the animal suffering across the globe and we want to do something about that. Cats, on the other hand, their instinct isn't to factory farm, by the way. Their instinct is to hunt. And so by feeding a cat a vegan kibble, you are placing your own human ethics over top of the cat's natural and most healthy diet. Cats have a different concept of ethics because they are obligated to hunt and eat prey. We are not.
They are also victims of society. We've created this problem of overpopulation. I can understand how many vegans would feel conflicted,
As
which
do
is
we.
probably, yeah, as do we, which is why we've gotten the question so often.
The way we look at it is we took on the responsibility of adopting these cats. And now these animals are in our care. And they can't choose to leave the house and go get something better for them.
So what are our choices and the choices for any vegan cat owner out there? Well, you could put them up for adoption, but then they'd be eating a shittier version of food with the different family.
Mm-hmm. And still eating meat.
Or we could euthanize them. But what the... No. I mean...
How vegan of us.
How vegan of us to do that.
Oh, you're a carnivore? Die.
We could feed them vegan cat food and hope for the best. I spoke to someone once. He was feeding 2 of his cats this new vegan food, and they both got urinary problems. He was like, yeah, I just took them off it for a couple of weeks and then I started them back up again. Having dealt with chronic illness, it is not in their best interest for me to be willy-nilly experimenting with a diet that is not natural to them.
Dr. Wynn actually had something to say about vegan cat food because we specifically asked her, what do you think about vegan cat food? And she says, unacceptable. Cats evolved to eat meat exclusively. Anyone who believes that we know enough nutritional science to substitute a vegan diet for the cat's natural diet displays hubris.
So what do we do as vegans to make sure that our cats are getting a nutritionally adequate diet and also minimizing our footprint?
We source our raw food from small companies that have close relationships with their suppliers.
And also the food that we get tends to have little bits of veggies. When a cat eats prey in nature, the prey might have eaten something beforehand. So they're used to consuming trace amounts of what have you, kale, spinach, carrots. They eat twice a day, maybe a treat or 2 throughout the day.
For the most part, we stick to smaller birds and occasionally fish that a cat would normally catch if you let it loose in the wild. Not in the streets of Los Angeles. You're obviously not going to feed a cat a cow.
Even though they
bison.
have raw beef, raw venison, raw boar. What's that comedian?
Doug Kehoe.
There's one commercial drives me nuts. Flavors that cats naturally crave, like beef, liver, chicken. How does a cat naturally crave beef? When is the last time anybody in this room saw a cat ripping across a field and taking down a cow? Right? Boom.
Now we know that raw food can be more expensive. It is reflective of the quality. Commercial pet food brands have had many recalls. What's more expensive? Making room in your budget for a better diet for your cat or your dog, or thousands and thousands of dollars in medical care? Because let me tell you, I know about bills.
Yeah, ultrasounds ain't cheap, kids. This is the same thing for human beings.
Yeah.
If you give yourself a healthy diet, then you will save yourself all the medical bills in the future. Mm-hmm. If you give your cat a healthy diet, you will save yourself all the medical bills in the future. We're just 2 different species with 2 different sets of requirements for what we eat.
If you really can't afford a raw food diet, just cut out the kibble. Look for smaller brands. Our general rule of thumb is if you can find it at a Petco or PetSmart, it's probably not that great. If you still can't bring yourself to feed them a raw food diet, whether it be because of expense or there is none available to you, you can try a lightly cooked diet.
However, Dr. Susan Wynn warns, many believe that raw diets are healthier because more nutrients are intact, having escaped cooking, which does destroy some B vitamins and amino acids. Commercial manufacturers make up for this loss by adding more of the nutrients. So it is cooked homemade diets that are more dangerous in this regard. Meaning, don't just go to the Ralph's and buy meat and cook it at home and give it to your pet and go, there it is,
Yeah.
all done. A lot of the commercially available cooked food has been supplemented.
Cats, much like us, also need some essential vitamins that they can't make on their own, such as niacin and taurine.
You can also try freeze-dried. I actually sent some to my brother for his dog. That's sort of a nice transition. That's the food where you have to add water. And in fact, we still add water to the raw meat. It's important for them to get enough hydration in their meal. You do want to transition.
Yeah, don't just all of a sudden plop new food into your pet's food bowl. That can cause digestive upset. Just gradually transition them. Now, what are some of the positive side effects that you might see in your pet when you switch them to a raw meat diet?
I think the first and foremost is going to be excitement about their food. I mean, their bowls after they eat look like they've been run through the dishwasher.
Yeah.
I'm like, do we need to wash this? We do wash it. Obviously, you want to be clean in your household since you are feeding raw meat to a carnivore. Secondly, it is common for a cat's coat health to dramatically improve.
Yeah, like our cats don't shed. Sweetie sheds a little bit because she's older and she also has a disease that pertains to her hydration level. But Emmy, Aria, and Gracie don't really shed.
Yeah, really thick, shiny coats.
Yeah.
Dr. Wynn pointed out this very fact. I've seen cats on supposedly excellent commercial foods with greasy, dandruff-ridden coats, and many of these can improve when simply switched to a balanced homemade cooked food or a commercial balanced raw food. So balance is the key. Just as a vegan Homo sapien, you want to have a balanced diet.
You will see an improvement in their energy levels and their vitality. It's almost like raw meat brings out the catness in them. And finally, it is very likely that you will help prevent many of these chronic terminal illnesses that plague our pets today. They're heartbreaking for us and it's difficult for them.
We can't just put them back in nature. We domesticated them over thousands of years.
They depend on us.
Here they are, and they need us, just like the cows and the pigs and the chickens and the factory farms need us too. All of these animals need the best possible care that they can get. And when it comes to pet cats, we would say that a raw meat diet is the best possible care we can give these cats.
If you have any questions or if we missed anything, please feel free to leave a comment.
Thank you guys for watching this video, and if you liked it, please click that thumbs up down below. That really helps us out.
Or a thumbs down.
And make sure to hit that notification bell so that you will be notified of all of our future videos that come out. And if you haven't already, subscribe.
And check out our Etsy store and our Facebook page and our Instagram and all that jazz.
As always, a big thank you to our patrons on Patreon. You guys are awesome, and if you like the video and you want to help us out on Patreon, you can do so. The link is in the description. Bye. You didn't eat anything.
That's because I was so preparing for this video all week. This topic is very important to me. Now, what are some of the positive side effects of feeding your pet a raw vegan?
Nope.
Don't say that. Do the best you can as is possible and practicable.
Oh,
right?
That reminds me of the definition of veganism.
Oh, look at Gracie's face is right there.
Gracie, you're on YouTube.